Alright guys, welcome back to the next episode of ISO 9001 series. Today we will be discussing about the overall structure of ISO 9001 2015 version. So ISO 9001 2015 version is starting with the foreword and then introduction. After the introduction there is a scope, there is terms and definition and references, and then there are clauses 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So first three clauses from forward to clause number 3, which is terms and definition, those clauses are basically generic and they are only for the information purpose. The actual standard starts from clause number 4 and goes up to clause number 10. From clause forward to clause number 3, standard is providing some basic information about the background of ISO organization, the background of ISO standard itself, the terminologies which are being used in this particular standard, some basic philosophies on which ISO 9001 is based. It is talking about process approach, which we explained earlier. It is talking about the risk-based thinking, which we explained earlier. And it is also referring to 7 quality management principles upon which ISO 9001 is based. So these 7 management principles we will discuss some other time. At this point in time, we will be only discussing about the key requirements of ISO 9001 2015 standard. So just to refresh your memory, we will just quickly go through with the key elements of these generic clauses. One of them is about ISO organization, that ISO organization is an international organization which is based in Geneva, Switzerland. The head office of this organization is in Geneva. And this word ISO itself is a proper noun and it is taken from the Greek language. The meaning of ISO, it was not ISO at the beginning, it was ISO in Greek language, and the meaning of this word was equality. So when this organization was formed in 1947, they were having a long name of this organization, International Organization for Standardization. So they wanted to have a short and sweet name, so they adopted a word from Greek language, and that was ISO, and the name was given to this organization. And since then, with every standard, this particular name is being used. So ISO organization was formed in 1947 February, and the purpose of this organization was to establish international standards. And since 1947, this organization is developing various international standards. At the beginning, they focused on the product related standards. Then later they went into the inspection and testing and calibration related standards. And then from 1987 onwards, they started focusing on the management system related standards. So they started with ISO 9001, which is Quality Management System Standard, which was published in 1987. And since then, they have worked on various different subjects on the management system side: quality, environment, health and safety, business continuity, information security, IT, supply chain security, food safety. So there are various different subjects related to the management system. They are already addressed by ISO organization. Then we come to the ISO Technical Committee, which is 176. ISO Technical Committee 176 is responsible for quality management system and publication of ISO 9001 standards. ISO has a structure where different technical committees are working on different subjects, and the technical committee which is responsible for ISO 9000 is TC 176. ISO 9001 2015 version is based upon mainly 2 basic principles. One is process approach, one is risk-based thinking, which we have discussed earlier. According to the process approach, we believe that the activities should be treated as a process, and process is having certain components: inputs, outputs, resources, controls, monitoring and measurement, and corrective action. These are the components of a process. So when we treat our activity as a process, we address all these requirements. We define input, we define output, we define the requirements related to the output, we define risk related to the outputs, we identify the resources, we provide the resources, we identify and establish controls, we identify and implement monitoring and measurement, and we establish a mechanism for correction and corrective action. In addition to that, this particular standard is based upon risk-based thinking, and risk-based thinking means that we are having a mechanism or we are having a philosophy within the organization to identify the risk. And once we identify the risk, we are in a position to address those risks. We want to either eliminate the risk or we want to reduce the risk up to a level where it becomes acceptable to us. So we take actions, we establish controls, we should establish monitoring and measurement, and again, the common element of corrective action will be in place. So the whole ISO 9001-2015 standard is structured exactly in the same manner, where a standard is talking about all these elements of process approach and elements of risk-based thinking. So clause 4 is about context of the organization. Clause 5 is about leadership. Clause 6 is about planning. Clause 7 is about support. Clause 8 is about operations. Clause 9 is about performance evaluation. And clause 10 is about improvement. But keep in mind that these clauses are not written in isolation. Every single clause is connected with the other clause. If you try to implement these clauses in isolation, you will not be able to achieve the main objective and main goal of quality management system. So clause 4 is connected with clause 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Clause 5 is connected with all the rest of the clauses. Clause 6 is connected with all the rest of the clauses. Clause 7, clause 8, clause 9, clause 10, they are all connected with each other. So if you are still following the same old philosophy of implementing these clauses in isolation because you are already having so many elements in place in the system and you just want to fix the missing elements, believe me, you are lost and you will not be able to achieve the target. If you want to effectively implement this management system, you have to follow the philosophy which is given prior to ISO 9001 standard, which is process approach and risk-based thinking. And the sequence of following those steps is also very important. When you talk about process approach, in process approach, the very first step is identification of process, right? And then you will see what are the inputs, and then you will see what are the outputs, then you will see what are the needs and expectations related to the output, and then you will see what are the risks related to the output. Once you are aware of all these things, then only you will be in a position to provide resources, to establish controls, and to establish monitoring and measurement. But if you don't follow this sequence, what will happen? You will say that resources are already provided, controls we have already established. Now come and we will see what are the processes, and now come and see what are the requirements. We are messed up. We will not be going anywhere. So we have to follow the right sequence. We have to identify the processes first. We have to evaluate the output first. We have to see the requirements first. And then only we will be able to decide about the key elements of ISO 9001, which is resource, control, monitoring and measurement, and corrective action. So this is the basic structure of quality management system in ISO 9001 from forward to clause number 3. Generic information is there, terms and definitions are defined, references are given, and some basic philosophies are explained. In this episode, we will end our discussion here, and inshallah in the next episode, we will be specifically discussing about the clause requirements starting from clause number 4. Thank you very much for watching and see you next time.